the original Mass Effect trilogy, in which I played Commander Shepard, and I also played a bunch of aliens in that. In fact, there's some alien species that I play all of in the Mass Effect universe. And so beyond that, I've done a lot of work with BioWare before on their Dungeons and Dragons games, and subsequently when Beamdog took those over with the new Baldur's Gate games that are coming out on the 15th of October, I believe, with a bunch of new content, partnered with Skybound, Robert Kirkman's company. So all that classic stuff, and then all the DLC they did back in the day, plus a bunch of new content. So it's got to be 500 or 600 hours of gaming, I would think, that's in all that combo package. And also with a bunch of incentives like Beholder dice trays and things like that. So you can look them up. They've got a bunch of stuff coming out October 15th. I also do a game called Long Dark, which is a ongoing survival game that, funnily enough, I do with Jennifer Hale, the female Commander Shepard, and we're the main characters in that. Very realistic survival game about not freezing to death or starving to death in Canada. So it's basically player versus Canada. And aside from that, various other games here and there. Let's talk about you, Michael. What about your career in video games specifically?
Video games specifically, I started probably 2002 or 3 with Lord of the Rings: The Third Age, and that was doing motion capture and voice. And I remember getting the job because I was one of the only people who could walk in a room and be a dwarf convincingly.
They need those. They learn and flashy with dwarves.
It was like you had to physically perform and act and walk and talk like a dwarf. And so I remember just like 22-year-old guy, and my axe, and just throwing this voice on and having a blast. And then I got into more motion capture in other areas, animated things, and Max Steel was one of them. I would do a lot of the performance capture for those games. And then later got into Watch Dogs, Mass Effect Andromeda. I did majority of the temp voices for the game. So temp voices, when they're making a game and they're doing motion capture, performance capture, you're doing voices for all these different characters, and sometimes they might be you, and sometimes they're casting other people, but you're doing the physicality and performance for those. And then they're going to have someone else come in and do the voices for them as well.
Yeah, I did a fair bit of temp voicing on the original Knights of the Old Republic that BioWare did, and then got replaced by a bunch of guys from LA. So
yes, that happens to Canadians.
They paid me. And also on Mass Effect, actually, I was doing even before I was cast as Shepard, I was doing a bunch of the alien stuff, of course, and then. During the audition process, or during the process of making the game, they asked me to audition for as Commander Shepard. But before that, I'd done some temp dialogue where I'm basically talking to myself in a scene, like having a Solarian bartender being threatened by Shepard and doing both ends of the conversation. So yeah, that's the kind of things you get to do when you work in video games.
Yeah. He's been like all the voices of the aliens, and I've done all the bodies.
Yes, I don't have the mocap experience that you do.
Together you're one whole person.
Basically, yeah, it just throws together. But yeah, no, there was it's really fun, and then I did some things with Anthem, and I guess I can't even mention it yet. There's two other a game you mentioned that,
and some other things
that I can't mention because of great, wonderful non-disclosures. But did Alexios in Assassin's Creed / Demos, which is the villain character. If you haven't played it, you can be either protagonist or antagonist. And that was the last 2 years of my life, and now I'm doing some more games, which you'll hear about soon. I'll let you know. But it was really, really an amazing project to be a part of. And that's kind of where I've been at with the video game world, and kind of bleeding more into that world from other acting areas of my life, which is film, television, and theater.
Yeah. So that's us. So that's who we are. And I guess the easiest thing to do is just open it up, because we don't have a moderator to ask us questions.
Yeah.
Unless you have any questions for me.
What got you into video games?
I auditioned. I went to, back when BioWare was having the cattle call auditions, as they call them, back in the late 90s. I did one of those, and I got cast in Baldur's Gate 2, which was my very first voice work for BioWare, and my first video game voice work, period. And it was in the final cutscene of Baldur's Gate 2, it was one line. So it was one line that you had to beat the entire game to see. So but they kept hiring me after that. So
I have a question.
Yes.
What was the difference for you when you jumped over from like acting? Because you've done a lot of theater, and a lot of comedy and improv and stuff like that.
Sure.
And even maybe animation. Did you find it different?
I even have a TV show on Amazon Prime, Tiny Plastic Men. You can get that. Okay, I plugged that. All right.
What would you find the difference for you when you jumped over to video games? Did you find a difference? Was it drastic? Was it?
I didn't find a huge difference because I'd done some voice work up till then. I'd done a fair bit of stuff for like CBC Radio and whatnot and voice stuff. Beyond that, I also played Dungeons and Dragons. Like I was a dungeon master, and when you're the dungeon master, of course, you're doing all the voices of everything that players encounter. So going into the Baldur's Gate games, I think that was a real advantage for me. Number one, I knew about just voice acting, that of course you're having to sell it without any physical presence, without the the other tools that an actor would be able to use. So I knew how to approach that. But beyond that, just being a Dungeons and Dragons player, I think helped when they were doing all those Dungeons and Dragons games, because the BioWare guys knew they could just get me, put me in the booth, and just say, "This guy's a 12th level paladin," and I'd know what they were talking about. Or I wouldn't be like, this guy's a kobold shaman. What's a kobold? What's a shaman? I already knew that. I'd be like, yes, they're lawful evil. So yeah, I'd say that my Dungeons and Dragons background did help me with those games.
Did you find any difference in animation to video games at all?
I would say the biggest difference is that in animation, I don't know how much animation you've done, but how much have you done where you've got the rest of the cast in the room?
Yeah,
And it's more like doing a play. And in video games, a lot of the time you're acting in a vacuum. Even when, like say we were doing Mass Effect, Seth Green and Tricia Helfer, they might be booked in at the same studio on the same day, but they're waiting in the lobby while the other person does theirs. They're not in the room together. And that's just the way that video games function. I think it's a matter of scheduling, because usually you have, in Mass Effect's case anyway, you had a big cast that was spread across 3 different countries and a couple of different continents. So scheduling was very pretty much impossible. And beyond that, that just seems to be the way that they handle things. They also, you probably have the similar experience. With video games, you never get the script ahead of time. You always, you walk in and you sign your NDA, and then they give you the script.
Oh, really? You had that?
Yeah, certainly with Mass Effect. Did they give you the Assassin's Creed stuff ahead of time?
Well, I would request it, because, maybe I just had the fortune of being like the main character, so I was like, I have to know what I'm saying. But I can't believe they didn't give it to Shepard and stuff.
No, well they did. Both Jennifer Hale and I relied on our directors to give us context.
Oh my God.
Like that. Okay. But that said, we were privy to like all the details of the plot.
Yeah, but it's still like how and what. And
but we didn't know what we were recording from day to day. It would be like, we think we're doing this, and then we come in and it's like, no, we're doing these scenes instead. And again, our directors, Caroline Livingstone is the one.
Lovely.
Yeah, I worked with Caroline a lot. And yeah, you probably worked with Robin.
Yeah.
And so she was fantastic, like always giving us context, letting us know. I also had the advantage of being in Edmonton, where BioWare is based. So Mac Walters, for example, was in the room sometimes during my sessions.
Okay.
And so we were able to get things like script changes approved on the fly. Like I wasn't changing the plot or anything, but it would be like, can I say it this way instead? This is a bit of a mouthful. And because we had to track things so carefully in Mass Effect, we needed Mac there so that he could make that change right away and approve it, and then also make sure that when Jennifer did her session, the exact same changes were made.
Yeah, because you did a male-female.
Yes, yeah, you could either be male Shepard, me, or a female Shepard, Jennifer Hale. And the same thing, if Jennifer recorded first, they had to track any change that was made so that my dialogue was going to match hers.
So in our game, we had to not necessarily match. Tone we had to match. We didn't have to necessarily match the way the other performed their lines, but we had to match the timing from beginning to end. It
was never about like you have to match the first person's delivery exactly, just that it has to be exactly the same dialogue and it has to take exactly the same amount of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was similar. Yeah. But leeway of your own performance within it.
Yeah. That said, it was often similar because it's like the same character in the same situation.
Yeah.
It's just that a man and a woman might approach saying this line differently. So,
right.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a very specific question you're gonna laugh at. So the goat scene.
Yeah.
Did you have to? I know, right?
Yeah.
Did you have to like motion capture that out? What did you use? How
My
did
mind.
you? Your mind? That was it. There was nothing there. You were just like,
have an
yeah, I'm
actor playing the
definitely
goat?
sticking.
No, like I literally. It's funny that scene was actually. It's funny enough. I blocked that scene and like made that mime up for them.
Yeah.
To show them, because they didn't know how they would even do it. They're like, basically the scene is, I have the guy named the Cyclops, he's a thug in the town, and I have his eyeball. and it's missing, so he's a patch over right now, and he's I guess interrogating Barnabas, and I show up, and I have his eye, which I'm like throwing in the air and catching. And so I did ask them eventually, because it was hard to do the miming of this for something that I could use, so they gave me like a golf ball or ping pong, something like ping pong ball to work with. But all they had was like, the director wants to stick it up the goat's butt. I was like, amazing! That's like the greatest thing ever.
You just had to mime it, there wasn't like a stand.
No, yeah, literally, it was.
No, actually, I didn't know what this scene was, so I'm like, I can understand why they didn't have an actor doing the.
But there was nothing there, so yeah, like we're just the other actor and I, and we had the thing, and so I did there's the ball, which is basically the throwing and whatever, and then like the bending down, and then grabbing the tail, the pulling it up, and then the popping it, and then the butt slap. So that's all. It was literally that. It was literally miming the entire performance, and I sort of blocked it out with them on how the camera would be angled, so we could see things a bit, so that it wouldn't see the whole. But it worked out really well.
It really did. It's very effective.
That's good. Yeah, thanks. That is one of my favorite moments, especially for motion capture, to be, because that's like real mime.
Yeah, I honestly thought like, with motion capture and stuff, a lot of the time you have to use your mind, but they'll throw something in like, here's a box, it's the sheep. Like stuff like that, so the fact that you did it all just completely mimed is really hilarious to me.
Yeah. Power of the imagination.
No animals were harmed.
Yeah.
No
CGI animal was
animals.
totally destroyed. They were worried about like how animal activists would be kind of taken aback by a couple of the animal things in the game. They had some concerns. And,
I mean, it's ancient Greece.
I was so happy because
Plus, that animal is made of ones and zeros, so.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. There's the other scene with Alcibiades where they go to some young people in the audience, but a fun night of sexhibitionism.
Sure.
Yeah.
All of that.
Yeah. And there's like a goat runs out of the room, and then he goes into the room, and he's like, "Oh, there's another goat."
Haven't you played this game?
I haven't yet, no. I spend all my time playing the games I've been and Fallout 4.
True.
We really wanted to, Cassandra and I and Melisande, we've always aimed to bring a lot of humor through. Greeks are very fun, and Greeks are very loud and obnoxiously fun. So we always tried to find ways to infuse humor into what could have been really serious. We took it and made it really funny. And the goats I thought were great because, you know, it's very cliche for Greeks and goats and the whole thing. So I'm glad that they thought people get offended, and us being Greeks all there were like, this is awesome. We approve, keep going. And,
this is perfect.
Yeah. No, it was good. I'm glad you liked it. Any other questions, Simone?
I have another one if nobody else.
Yeah, sure.
Very well.
Okay, so
You're our moderator.
Yeah.
Hi, here I am. I literally volunteered on the Tri-City page. I was like, if you guys need help, I can help understand.
Oh, you're helping.
Oh, that's good. Lovely.
So the wonderful DLC that everybody loved so much.
Yes.
I didn't mind it personally. I thought it was okay. But that Nightmare Baby. What were your thoughts? Have you played the DLC?
Yeah, I've
like,
seen it. I've seen all of it. I mean, yeah. The
The
Nightmare
one with the
Baby.
baby in it,
Yeah.
where you get married.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you call it Nightmare Baby, though? That's the question.
Because it's horrifying.
Like the way it looks?
So it's, first of all, it has zero motion involved in it whatsoever, so you could swing it like a bat. But were you guys just holding a bundle? Was that imagination too?
Yeah.
It's all about,
Yeah, it's literally.
yeah, I keep asking about motion capture because it's fascinating to me, but I don't, if you guys had used like an actual baby, I guess you couldn't have, but I don't know, it might have been less horrifying
There
to
would
me.
probably be insurance.
Yeah, insurance issues with
Liability
that.
issues.
No, really my thoughts were whether you were horrified by it at all when you watched through the DLC or played through it, but I guess not, considering I called it a Nightmare Baby and you were surprised.
I remember seeing that. I remember seeing some things online about people being like, "What's up with the baby?" So I do remember that. And but no, it didn't take me out too much because I'm just seeing past it. I'm trying to focus on the scene
Yeah.
it's about. And yeah, I had nothing other than a little thing we put in our arms to swaddle, and I pictured my own kid.
Aw.
But sure, like that was hard stuff, but you know, it was a very emotional part of the game, that whole section. And so in the voice booth, like I was there picturing my wife dying, and my
Aw.
chase after her, and I never cried so much in the voice booth in my career as I did
Break our hearts, why don't
those
you?
things. Yeah. I mean, it is an emotional DLC, but that's really me, like, actually picturing those things and
Aw.
using that as reference points to, like, cry my face off.
That's really fascinating, actually,
Yeah.
using like specific,
Yeah.
reference points to you to help with the
Well, it's
what's
hard.
going on.
Very
Yeah.
Stanislavski.
Yeah, I mean, I take things from different styles all the time, whatever works now when I needed something. Because the voice booth is challenging, as I'm sure you know. It's like you've got to find these emotional moments while you're standing in a box with a person through a glass window, and you're like, I can't even imagine not having my own. But I would get them, say, on a Friday, and we start on Monday sometimes. But our scripts would be like 300 to 500 page long scripts. Once we had a 900 page script on like a Friday, and I was like, oh good God. And like you barely have time to read it, like on a weekend. You barely have time to get through it. So doing homework on it is very hard. The most homework you can really do is just really, I'm trying to understand where these people are at in this moment. And then we have choice wheels. And you got to go this way. So you've got to figure out how would that person feel this way, and this way. And then when you're in a voice booth and you've got to deal with decisions like that and emotional things, and do your best to make them somewhat authentic while dealing, within a very inauthentic condition.
Setting, yeah.
So that's what I used. Yeah, it was my reference point. So I would just sit there and I'd picture my wife and holding her. It was very painful.